Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, one thing that I've noticed about this RPG a day is that once I started recording videos in August, all of a sudden I have all these video topics that are kind of bubbling to the surface, and it's kind of annoying because I'm like, I should really wait till September, but some of them just become so prevalent in my mind. I decide, what the heck, I'll cut a video. So maybe I'm inundating you and the channel with too many videos. But maybe, what the heck. So we're going to go with, like, what the heck. How about that? And so I'll talk about this topic. Polar seltzer, cranberry lime. So, watched a video by Matthew Colville the other day. It was about railroading. I think it's his latest video, running the game, whatever the heck it was. And he's one of those guys that, he's a 5th edition talking head to a large extent on YouTube. He's one of the people that has a really popular YouTube channel that I don't mind. I actually kind of find him entertaining, and I don't agree with everything he says by a long shot, but he doesn't annoy me. And some of the things he says are quite thought-provoking, so I appreciate his channel. And so I don't watch everything he puts out, but I like checking out what he says and thinking about it. So in that video, he talked about, and I'm misquoting a little bit, I believe, but the idea that the most important people are the characters, are the player characters. They are definitely what the world kind of revolves around. The story is about them. It's not about your grand scheme. This is where he was talking about railroading a little bit. It's not about the grand things you're going to show the player characters. What they do and their decisions are the most important thing in the world. I get behind that. However, are they the most important people in the entire world? So these are topics I've talked about before, that I've thought about a little bit before. Maybe I just wonder if I'm synthesizing a little bit more in my head. Maybe it'll just be really redundant. I don't care. I'm going to make the video and watch or not. But it got me thinking, like, in a game that you gravitate towards, because there's a whole bunch of games out there, and all of them produce a different type of feel. And we can also, as players, influence those games and make them feel different ways. It's not just mechanics, but how we play them. But oftentimes the mechanics themselves influence, what's going to happen, not just, what we do. Part of that is, like, who's the most important person in the world? Is it the player characters? Yes, the story is about what the characters did. I believe that firmly, and no matter what game is going on. That's the important thing. However, are we so important that, what we choose to do kind of dictates reality? I believe the players ought to have agency. But are we that important that we really move and shape the events in the world? Or is it something more like, I don't know, like we're playing soldiers in World War II, where, we're kind of powerless to affect real gigantic change in what's going on. We're playing against a very powerful backdrop. Our decisions can make a lot of difference in our lives and the lives of the people around us, but not necessarily the entire world. The entire world doesn't revolve around us. We're not playing Bringing the Ring to Mordor. Maybe you can play that if you want to, but not in that game. And then it got me thinking, not just about, where's the focus, but also like the balance of power in the world. Who's more powerful? Is it the player characters? Is it the non-player characters? Or are things on a level playing field? I got to thinking about this an awful lot lately, not just because I was thinking about like cinematic games versus more realistic games, but also like when we played in Robert the Narrator's game, which we did a play test. Hopefully, I want to talk to him more about the mechanics, because they're really cool mechanics. I like what he's done. But part of the intention that he had right out of the gate, he was really upfront about this, is he wanted the player characters to feel cinematic, and he wanted them to feel cinematic in comparison to non-player characters and the monsters, whoever people they were going to actually interact with and perhaps fight or have social interactions with or whatever. He told us, like, flat out, like, player versus player is not going to work really well, because you're pretty much evenly matched. It's not going to work the same as combat with non-player characters. And it was true. Like, I didn't see like all the little details and the charts and whatnot, but pretty much it's set up so player characters at whatever level are really competent when compared to non-player characters. And so it's possible you can get, like, say, several attacks around. You can knock out several mooks. You can do things that the average person cannot do. But that's the intent of that game. It's not a level playing field. It was kind of fun. But, that's the kind of feel he was going for. Now, in something like, I haven't played it, but something like 7th Sea First Edition, it's a little bit both. I mean, the player characters are very jacked up, but they can have non-player characters that are quite jacked up as well. But there's also the minion and mook rules, so you can kind of knock out a whole bunch of people. Ubiquity has that a little less powerful, but there's certainly blade fodder rules, and that's common to a ton of games. Even like House Ruled old, probably Gary Gygax. In fact, Gary Gygax for sure. House Ruled early D&D where you knock out a whole bunch of mooks at once. And there's other rules in Ubiquity to handle depending on like what level of mookdom you want to enforce. But for the most part, that game is all about you have the same level of competence as the people around you. It might be a little bit more, but you're not head and shoulders. There's other games, like look at the kind of the vibe that like games like Call of Cthulhu, a lot of horror type games go for, where maybe you're just as competent as the guy next to you or the guy down the street. But in terms of like what you're actually investigating, the things you come up in contact with, you're this little teeny thing in the universe against these huge, phenomenal cosmic powers. We're tiny and insignificant and completely powerless to affect the outcomes. Which kind of game do you want to play in? And, what's your intent? What's the genre that you're trying to emulate? Because I believe that's super important. It's not enough just to be cinematic, as Nolan Inquisitor reminded me the other day. But it's like, what's the genre? What are you really trying to emulate? Which is very, very true. But as I've thought about it, it's not just the level of how cinematic are the characters or not cinematic compared to you and I, in the real world. But what's the balance of power versus everybody else? That's pretty important too. I was even thinking back to like old school D&D, old OSR type D&D, where the characters start out as they're more powerful than the average person, but a little bit. And then over time, of course, they go from the 0 to hero progression. And I want to make a video soon about like how I've kind of like come more to terms or gotten more behind the idea of maybe starting characters out at like something like 3rd level in those OSR games. And this is more based on my experience with Ubiquity. That's a totally different topic. But in a lot of those games, eventually you got to the point where, yes, you were more powerful than the average, Tom, Dick, and Harry on the street. But that's not necessarily who you were going toe-to-toe against. So, kind of a long and rambly video, but just it's something to think about. When you're deciding like what kind of game experience you want, whether it's like I always want to have the cinematic game experience, or whether it's just this particular genre. What are we trying to emulate here? Not just power level of characters. I talked about the tiers or whatever of power, but what's the balance of power in the game world? Whether it be social, influence, combat, magic, whatever the heck it is. Are we on a level playing field? Do you want characters that are not on a level playing field? Do you want them to be powerful and cinematic? Or do you want them to be these little teeny guys against the backdrop of World War II, the Cold War, Cthulhu, God knows what else. Whatever kind of creepy stuff you can dream up in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. So yeah, that's my kind of little ramble for today. Balance of power.